Hello everyone, I would like to remind you that I need some TLC. Touch the subscribe button, like the video, and comment. Thank you. Today I would like to speak a bit about the idiosyncrasies of democracies. Okay, the different peculiarities of certain democracies. First, perhaps we should just define. We have full democracies, starting with countries like in Scandinavia, followed by most European countries, and Canada, United States, Australia, New Zealand. We have flawed democracies. Actually, United States is usually described as flawed democracy in the UK-based democracy index, and other countries like that. And then we have full authoritarian countries, which is or semi-authoritarian countries like obviously North Korea, China, Russia, and most of the Middle East, South Central African countries. And Latin American countries are mostly, I think, inside the flawed democracies in the democracy index based in the UK. And what do I mean about idiosyncrasies? For instance, compulsory voting. Most countries of the world do not have compulsory voting. Very few actually have it. The few that have it are in Europe today. I think they have it in Belgium and perhaps in tiny countries like Luxembourg and Liechtenstein. But famously, they have it in Australia. And I'll give the example of Australia. What does compulsory voting mean in Australia? It doesn't mean that you have to go and vote, but it does mean that in order not to pay a fine, I need to show up in the voting booth. Once I show up, they register me, so I don't have to pay a fine. If I don't show up on election days, then I'll pay a fine. It's not a huge amount, maybe 100 Australian bucks or something like that. Once I'm in the voting booth, of course, I can do whatever I want. I can insert an empty envelope. I can perhaps write in Kylie Minogue, Tones and I, Elvis Presley. Okay, so I can do but I do need to show up. So that's something that's relatively unique to Australia and few other countries, democracies. Another thing that we could talk about unique, a peculiarity of democracy, is what we have. Well, we're going to get to the United States later because there's many examples there, and we'll want to discuss some of them. But I want to talk about the idea of the system in France. Okay, the governmental system in France has a president with powers, not as much in the United States powers, but quite a few powers, especially in foreign policy. Today it's Emmanuel Macron, but underneath him there's also a prime minister. In countries like in the United States, we have a president with powers, not just a representative. Usually you don't have a prime minister. But in France, you also have a prime minister who's under the president, who largely is responsible for the internal part, okay, the interior responsibilities in France. Today it's Edouard Philippe. Okay, now let us get to the United States and discuss a few issues that are unique to the United States. And before that, I would like to talk generally, like we divide the countries into full democracies and flawed democracies and authoritarian regimes. So you can also divide country into federal system versus a non-federal system. What is a federal system? A federal system exists in North America, okay, Canada, United States, and Mexico. That's three countries in North America. It exists in Australia, it exists in India, and in Brazil and other places. And that is that the states, sometimes called provinces or other names, have quite a bit of independence, but have quite a bit of responsibilities, and above them they have a leader who's responsible for all of it. Other countries, like the UK, are not federal. The United government, the UK government is really the decider, and they can delegate responsibilities to the Parliament in Scotland and Wales and so on, but generally it's not a federal system, so the rights of each state are limited. They're not called states in the UK. And because of this, now the United States, there's quite a bit of rights for each state. There's quite a bit of, to the extent that some people call the disunited states of America. That's, I think, going too far. But the idea is that the states do have quite a bit of power. And this goes into the idea now that I want to discuss in the US, which is unique in terms of Electoral College. Now, there are other unique things in the United States. The fact that the right to bear arms, okay, for me to hold a rifle, perhaps even an automatic rifle like AR-15, is a right inside the Constitution, or more accurately inside the Bill of Rights, which is the first 10 amendments of the Constitution. Famously, the Second Amendment is unique to the United States. And if you juxtapose that to the fact that only the United States, not every citizen is guaranteed health care as a right, often it's connected to his employment and so on. So that's unique, meaning having health care, which almost every country is guaranteed, is not a right in the United States, but bearing arms is. So it's interesting. But I want to talk now about the Electoral College. What I mean about that, in the United States, you find a phenomenon that sometimes, for instance, the president who is elected is not the one who got the most votes. He didn't win the popular vote. An example for that is now in 2016. Hillary Clinton had 3 million more votes than Donald Trump, approximately, but Donald Trump became president. How does this happen? This happened because of the Electoral College system. And the Electoral College system, every state votes. So, but what do they vote for? They vote for electors. They don't even vote directly for the president. What are electors? Electors are 538 people. And the winner of the presidency needs to get 270 electors or more. If he does, he won. Or she won. Obviously, both sides can't get more than 270 because only 538 to begin with. And every state votes, and then the system is, besides Maine and Nebraska, which is a little different, but in 48 of the states and District of Columbia, the system is that winner takes all in terms of the state. Okay, so every state gets a certain amount of electors. You get at least 3. If you're a full state, you get at least 3 electors, okay? So, Puerto Rico doesn't, for instance. It's not a state yet. And then countries that have bigger populations have many more electors. So California is the biggest state, and it has 55 electors, followed by Texas with 38, and then New York with 29. And so on and so forth. And so if I vote in California, the candidate who gets, let's say, 51% will get all the electors from California, meaning all the pledged electors that pledged to vote for the Democratic nominee. If he's the one who won California, the Democratic nominee wins. That's what we call, that's what do you call a red state? A blue state, sorry, that's what we call a blue state. And therefore, he'll get all the electors. So even if there's millions and millions of people in California who voted against me, if I got the majority of electors, that's enough. And then I get the whole state. And therefore I can lose in the popular vote and win in the Electoral College. Now this system is unique because these pledged delegates, what if they decide not to vote for who they pledged for? For whom they pledged for? They decide to change their vote. So in only 32 states you even have any kind of ramification. And in some of them, it's not even enforced. And if it is enforced, sometimes the enforcement is some kind of fine, not a big fine they have to pay. So theoretically, we can vote for electors and then they can go vote against what we voted them to do. That doesn't happen often. There haven't been many faithless electors, a few hundred out of many, many thousands during the years, but tens of thousands. But it is possible to happen. That's good to know. And that's a certain specific unique thing to the United States. And this video, I think, was long enough. So just to summarize, a democracy has different idiosyncrasies, peculiarities to them. We mentioned the idea of Australia, and very few other countries have compulsory voting. We mentioned a system in France with some kind of hybrid between presidential system like United States, but there's also a prime minister who has his own responsibilities, especially in interior affairs. And we discussed the uniqueness of the United States, not only in some of their amendments, like the Second Amendment to bear arms and not having health care as a right, but also in terms of the voting system, how in the United States it can happen where I lose the popular vote and I still win the presidency. Thank you very much. I'll remind you about the TLC, touching the subscribe button, liking the video, and commenting. Thank you, and see you next time.